This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Brendan. Not joined with me is Corey. I'm going solo. If you followed Corey and I for the past 10 years, every now and then we go solo. Not Corey's fault. He has a little bit of a family emergency. He wanted to make it. Not going to happen. He's doing okay for those concerned. But last second, we're going solo. But we do have a lot of topics. We're doing a mailbag episode. I put out a tweet asking for different topics, questions from followers that are on the minds of fans entering the offseason, especially now that the GM meetings have been wrapped up on this Friday. So we'll get into it. We'll talk about maybe some potential free agent targets, some trade candidates, what to expect from the current group of guys going forward, and all things considered. I got about 30 responses in about an hour. I will try to get through most of them if I can. And I got to be honest with you. If you don't like school or online classes, you may just want to exit out of this. I'm going to be showing some graphs, some code. I'm going to make it work, okay? Because you have me for 1 hour. And when Corey's not here to guide the discussion, rein in some of the thoughts that come in my mind, this is what you get. So either you're happy right now to see my face, or you're going to tune out and see us next week. But if you do want to stay on, I promise you it's going to be fun. You may even find a few things that we'll talk about interesting. So let's get into it. One of the topics that's driving the past few weeks in terms of free agent candidates is starting pitching. We've heard reports from many of the beat guys, including our own Ryan Herrera, that the Cubs are prioritizing perhaps pitching, and maybe more so than hitting, given that the hitters seem to be more locked in. And when I say locked in, it's difficult to trade Ian Happ, difficult to trade Seiya Suzuki, no trade clauses. Dansby Swanson's locked up. Nico Horner's injured. PCA, of course, is going to get the first shot in center field, and that leaves the corners open for some potential trade discussions. We're talking Isaac Paredes, Bush, but they're coming off, whether it be last season or the previous few seasons, some decent years. So the question then becomes, from the front office's perspective, how much are they willing to trade those guys for a return that in their minds should be better, because you're trading young major league talent. It seems quite difficult. So therefore, pitching has been more of a topic. The Cubs last season had success in their starting pitching staff. Justin Steele, when healthy, essentially mirrored that from 2022. Rather 2023. My years are going crazy. Jameson Taillon looked like the same guy that we saw in New York. Shota Imanaga outperformed every projection system, most fans' expectations, and they led and anchored the rotation. The counterpoint argument to the Cubs starting pitching and going forward as is that Wrigley Field played like a pitcher's ballpark last season. Of course, that's maybe due to random weather conditions. Maybe we have seen the balls change a little bit within the last year, but it did perform worse from a hitter's perspective than other ballparks. So then the question is, well, then did the Cubs pitching staff get an advantage? Did Shota Imanaga, a primary fastball, fly ball guy, get an advantage? Jameson Taillon had worse splits on the road than he did at home. Does that normalize? Justin Steele is a unicorn. He's probably going to be fine. Separate from those three, we have Javi Assad. We have all of our rookies or sophomores. Jordan Wicks, who was injured last year. Ben Brown with an interesting neck injury that is unlike most injuries you see from pitchers. Can he be projected to be a confident contributor in 2025? We don't know because the nature of the injury is an unknown. Cade Horton was unfortunately sidelined for about half the season with a back, oblique, shoulder, whatever you want to call that part of your body, that injury. Hayden Wisniewski also suffers some injuries. Right now, the Cubs pitching staff, the younger guys, are dealing with rehabbing currently or getting past a rehab and trying to ramp up for their first full season. So then the question becomes, can you rely on those starting pitchers if Shota takes a little bit of a step back? If Jameson Taillon's age and or splits normalize, if Wrigley Field plays back up to a normal ballpark next year? And I think these are all like very fair questions. And then separate from just the Cubs' current staff and those questions in mind, the sport continues to change. So within the last 2-3 years, we're seeing more heavy stuff. We're seeing hitters adapt. There was a trend last season where hitters started to perform a little bit better against sweepers. Now that might be due to more pitchers adopting sweepers, or it could be due to hitters adjusting to it. So the league's adjusting, which means you have to account for how your team, your staff can handle a new hitting environment, especially one where your staff is starting to age a little bit. Shota in his 30s, Steele soon to be entering his 30s, in his late 20s. Taillon, of course, is aging. These are all fair questions. So the first question that was posed to me on Twitter through our mailbag is related to Max Fried and Corbin Burnes. And this is from D West. Quote, why is Corbin Burnes a better target than Max Fried? And I'll be quite honest with you. I don't know if it's Fried or Fried. We're going with Fried because Corey said it sounds like his last name. I'm going with it. I can't pronounce half the words anyway. We're going with Max Fried. And why won't Jed go get his Corbin copy? That was the end of DUS quote. Okay. We're going to get into it. I'm going to show why perhaps Max Fried makes sense for the Cubs from their thinking, what stands out, why he could be a successful contributor, and how he differs from Corbin Burnes. And we're going to go straight into some graphs here. So the first thing I want to show, and I'm going to pull it up right here, is what makes Corbin Burnes stand out. So I'm going to do this little share screen thing, and you're going to see this thing pop up on the left side of, or the right side of my face. If you're on Spotify, you can always come to YouTube, see some of these visuals. I'll do my best to actually describe what is coming on the screen over here. But we're going to look at what I like to call a siblings plot. Okay. So the siblings plot is attempting to find pitchers who are similar, hence the name sibling. I call it sibling because this technique, this statistical technique, is often used in genetics research. It's a rather simple technique, so it's nothing too crazy about this. If you're in like an introduction to college statistics course or machine learning course, you're going to see this technique, which is called principal component analysis. And what this technique does is take what we call high dimensional data, which means a lot of different features. In StatCast, that would be how fast you throw, your spin rate, where you release the ball, the angle at which you release that ball, the spin axis, horizontal movement, location, height, etc., etc., etc. It's a lot of different features, and we just want a simplistic answer. We want to know, of all those features, which are similar for a group of pitchers, which pitchers share a similar class of features. So this is where principal component analysis comes in. It is going to compress this data by looking at the correlation among each feature and reduce it down to a visualized space, a two-dimensional space, which for your math nerds out there, x-axis is one of your variables that's reduced, and then your y-axis. This allows us to look visually at similar pictures. Okay. So let me make my screen bigger over here. I'm going to try my best to do this. I've never done the share screen before, so you're going to bear with me. Okay. So first thing we're going to do, we are going to look at Max Fried. So here we go. We're going to type his last name into this box, and you are going to see a group of red dots on the top left. And you're going to see all these other black dots. Each one of these dots represents a starting pitcher. Now, in big, bold text is Max's name, and around him is a cluster of red dots. These are similar pitchers to Max through his fastball. So we can see, okay, well, who does he look like? Which features is he similar to? And among the group of pitchers he's similar to, one of them is Blake Snell, who has been connected with the Cubs in terms of free agent rumors or trying to figure out if he fits in with this current team. Wade Miley, former Cub, is also on here. Now, these are just the top 5 similar pitchers. I will point out, if you type in Justin Steele and do the same type of analysis, you'll see that red cluster of dots is really close to Max. And in fact, Justin Steele, his 5 closest siblings, is actually Max Fried. And so the reason this is the case, I'm going to highlight now this column. I just want to make sure that my StreamYard is not breaking over here, which is not. Excellent. So the reason that they're similar is because Max throws one of those cut-like fastballs, similar to Justin Steele. If you look at the horizontal break or how much his fastball moves laterally, Steele and Max are very similar. Steele has about half an inch of slight tailing action. And in reality, this is more of a relative cut. Max is different. Max actually has 0.5, half an inch of spin-braced cut to his fastball. He throws this pitch at 94 miles per hour, whereas Justin Steele throws this at 92. So there are similarities in that they both throw cut-like fastballs. They're also similar in release point. So they both have 6-foot release points. Their pitch also moves at around 11:30 on a clock. And they also have similar vertical approach angles. So the angle at which that fastball crosses home plate. Spin rate's also very similar. Now, where they differ is exactly why Steele stands out. For someone with as much cut as Steele, typically you don't see as much induced vertical break. And for Steele, he generates 14 inches of induced vertical break for having that type of cut. He's one of the most cut ride guys in Major League Baseball. Now, Max doesn't have as much induced vertical break, whereas Steele has 14 inches. He has about 11 inches of vertical break. Now, why am I pointing this out? Well, the Cubs have had success with this type of formula, finding a pitcher that has a unique fastball shape. We're talking even Shota Imanaga. We're talking Kyle Hendricks recently. We're even talking about changing and working with Jameson Taillon's fastball shape over the years since he came over from the Yankees. They've had success shaping this to success. And I feel as if due to Max's similar traits to Steele, again, it's not identical. These are sibling plots. They do have their differences. Max seems to stand out as a guy who would fit the mold of how the Cubs have gone about having success. So that's his fastball. Now, his dominant secondary pitch is going to be a curveball. This is where Steele and Max differ. So for Steele, he throws a dominant slider. Now Max throws a dominant curveball. And so we can look at what his curveball looks like. And again, you're seeing in the top right a cluster of red dots that completely deviate from the norm of most pitchers. Now, if you're an average pitcher, your dot is going to be in the middle of all these other dots. But Max is deviating away from the norm, which is illustrating that few pitchers like him have those traits that make him stand out. So we're going to get into his curveball. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back out and we'll continue talking about him. I'll show his actual, projected value instead of all this nerdy numbers and all this principal components and all stuff. We'll get into it. But let's take our first ad break here. Okay, we are sponsored by Chicago Sports Network, the new home of the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox games. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also Chicago-based, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core. They're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across 77 neighborhoods and beyond. At CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more info on how to watch the Bulls, Hawks, or Sox all season long. Okay. Some beers can say they're brewed for baseball. Only Blue Moon is brewed by baseball. Beer and baseball just go together, and there's no beer that goes better than the one that was literally born in a ballpark. Blue Moon was created at Coors Field in Denver, Colorado. It's the natural choice for opening day coming up this February and March, and all season long. Blue Moon got me through the 2024 spells of broken and blown games and broken offenses. It reminds me of baseball. Why strike out with the same old beer when you can get something one of a kind? A beer this good only comes around once in a Blue Moon, but you can enjoy it all off season long. So bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon Belgian style wheat ale. It's one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Okay, back to Max Fried's curveball. Okay. So, just to take a step back too, the reason we're bringing this all up in contrast to Corbin Burnes is whereas Corbin Burnes has thrown 30 plus starts over the past several years, has a lower ERA, has more innings pitched, and we'll get into the actual number comparisons. But the reason we're bringing this up in contrast to Burnes is that the projected salaries are quite different. For Max Fried, it's around, it's all kind of just large brushstrokes, but maybe $160 to $180 million, maybe in that Dansby Swanson range. For Corbin Burnes, some have even suggested upwards north of 250, maybe 300 million. And when we're comparing the two, money does have an effect for this front office. And if they believe they can get the most out of Max for a cheaper rate, and in fact, maybe overlap some of the projections, and it seems like he would fit. So the question always is, well, how would he be successful? So his curveball, back to his curveball. Who does his curveball look like? Not many guys. And it's not to say, oh, well, that's not good. You want to be similar to other guys, but he's just really not. If you look at just the minimum number of pitches for other similar pitchers, only a handful of guys have similar curveballs, but they only threw a few of them. So, Yuki Matsui threw 9 curveballs last year. Jalen Beeks threw 11. We have Thompson over here. Zach Thompson threw 45 curveballs. In comparison, Max Fried threw almost 300 curveballs at this unique feature rate. So what makes it unique is that it has 17 inches of drop. Jameson Taillon has talked to us for years now how he wants his curveball to be around 10 inches of horizontal and 10 inches of drop. Max has 17 inches of drop and 10 inches of horizontal. This thing dives straight down. Okay. Throws at 75 miles per hour, 2,000 RPMs on a spin rate with that high release point. This is what makes him stand out. He has a four-seam fastball with some cuts, slight rise, and then he has this curveball that just goes straight down. Max also has many other different pitch types. He's not just a two-pitch guy. He does throw a slider, and we can see how a slider looks. If you look at his slider, maybe there's some room for improvement, but now we're starting to see other similar guys. So Carlos Rodon has a similar slider to Max. We have Scott Alexander, similar slider. This is kind of the group that you can compare a slider to, but he doesn't throw it that much. We're talking 10 to 15% of the time. Now, he also throws a sinker. Okay, so he's a curveball, fastball primary guy, throws a slider, but also throws a sinker. His sinker looks very similar to Justin Steele. Again, on the very far left part of the screen, deviates away from the norm. And if you type in Justin Steele here, you can actually see that Max comes up. So they both share similar four-seam fastballs and similar sinkers. The interesting part about this is Steele's secondary pitch is his primary way of finishing at bats, but that differs to how Max finishes his at bats with a curveball. So that always starts to give me an idea of, well, if this is the case, if they have similar release points, if their fastball shape is the same, well, what if the next stage of development for someone like Justin Steele is going back into what he used to throw in 2021 and experimenting with a curveball? Well, what better guy to have on your staff than Max, who has very similar mechanics, or at least according to this compressed StatCast form, similar pitch types, similar release points, similar shape? Then that could allow him to learn how to perhaps throw a curveball, or you can exchange ideas between the two. That is also what's really intriguing. The way I see the Cubs going throughout the offseason is targeting guys exactly like Max. So if you look at his projected value, the limitation is that he's never thrown over 185 innings, but he has started 29 games, 30 games, 28 games, 30 games, several times in his career, as you can see. It's just he hasn't gone over that 185 limit mark. But even with not doing that, 29 starts, really good, has had a 3.07 career ERA. His walk rate, 2.5 batters per 9 innings. His K per 9 is about average, slightly under 9 batters per game. This is very reminiscent of what you saw. I don't want to put the comparison directly, but it's similar in some respect to John Lester's peripherals in terms of he's someone who doesn't strike that many guys out, around average, might go above league average every now and then, but he's going to show pristine command and be a unique presence on the mound. Now, Lester had 200 plus innings year in, year out, the playoff pedigree. Max does not have that. He has a history of injuries. That is why in his contract, it will be discounted relative to Corbin Burnes. That is also why the Cubs might be willing to go and spend on him versus Burnes, because it could be a much cheaper rate. Now for Corbin, you can see why he might make more money. So the last 3 seasons, he started at least 32 games. Max has never done that. His career strikeout rate, Corbin Burnes, 10.5 batters per game. Same exact walk rate, 2.5 batters per game. The difference where the Cubs could be seeing some odd projections in their system is that Corbin Burnes' strikeout rate has gradually decreased over the last 4 seasons. In 2021, it was 12.6 batters per game. 2022, it dropped to 10.8. 2023 dropped to 9.3. 2024, last season, 8.4. So he's hanging out in the same strikeout tier now as Max Fried, despite the overall career averages being higher and more favorable for Corbin Burnes. Where teams may want to spend more money on him versus Max is due to that recent track record of stamina, of few arm concerns, having 32 plus stars over the last 3 seasons in an era defined by shorter outings, less starting pitching stamina is impressive. And teams might be willing to pay up to achieve that value going forward. Cubs may just not want to take that risk. They may want to take someone like Max, who has similar projected value. If you overlay the range of possibilities for Corbin Burnes and Max Fried, you can easily see that, the 30th percentile outcome for Max is pretty much close to what you would give for Corbin Burnes. Now, Corbin Burnes is going to be a little bit tighter in terms of projecting more wins and more strikeouts and more innings, but it's not unrealistic. And in fact, pretty close to being an overlap between the two guys. It's just a matter of what a team's financial outlook looks like and what they're willing to pay for maybe some more inning certainty. But Corbin Burnes is going to be, right now he's 30 years old. He's going to be entering, after he signs this contract, the 2026 season as a 31-year-old. So this, again, now the ages are similar, but would the Cubs be willing to spend $100+ million more on Corbin Burnes when Corbin and Max's projected value are similar to overlap? Recent history, how the front office has operated, suggests they're going to go with someone like Max's profile. That's fine. There's always the comparison, Dansby Swanson. They did the same thing with Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson was the 4th guy in the shortstop market in the 2022 offseason, and they went with the 4th guy. Yeah. They wanted someone with a high value floor. So then the critique is, we need some higher output, some more risk, right? I think I view this a little bit differently than the Dansby Swanson situation, despite those similarities. Pitching is volatile right now. This environment is a little unpredictable. Corbin Burnes versus Max, I see the logic, and make no doubt about it, I would love to have both those guys. And if money were an issue, then of course you have to go with Corbin Burnes. But because of the unique traits, the 4 pitch types that Max Fried uses, because of the history of going 28 plus starts per season, even though he hasn't gone 200 innings, I get that. But when you enter year 30 in age, I'm over 30. I can barely stand up in the morning. Because when you get into this territory, you have to account for some volatility in your projections. And for $100 million difference between those two, which you can model as being maybe negligibly different, I see the Cubs going for Max over Corbin. Again, would love to have Corbin Burnes. I would love to have both, quite frankly, even though it's not going to happen. But that's the situation. To sum it up, if you like Justin Steele's fastball, if you like the way the Cubs have developed fastball guys, Max Fried fits that shape. Secondly, if you would like Justin Steele to continue to adapt, last season his adaptation was implementing a sinker he used to throw, trying new changeups that he used to throw, changing just a grip on his new pitch types, even though he used to throw it. Having someone's experience in Max with very similar features, not even anecdotally or not even subjectively, literally by compressing every single StatCast metric, Max Fried and Justin Steele are very similar in many respects. I would like Justin to perhaps learn from someone like Max, who has the experience with, like, say, a curveball. You never know what happens when you put talent like those two guys in the same room. It has propelled other people's careers in the past. Yu Darvish has talked a lot about talking with other pitchers and their pitch types. Even within the midseason, he used, at the time, Craig Kimbrell's curveball. In fact, Yu Darvish was adamant that it helped him. So this does have an effect. That's the clubhouse effect, by the way, that I have talked about with Corey on the show. All right, we'll get back to more mail questions. D West, I spent 30 minutes on your tweet. Okay, you should feel honored. Let's take a quick break here. Okay. Does Blue Chew work? If you're asking that question, we want to know that Blue Chew is putting their money where their mouth is by giving you a month free. Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. Just sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Does it work? Don't think you need it. Try it for a month and see. You're going to love it, and your partner is also going to love it. Rugged Road. Rugged Road is dedicated to creating innovative and durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. Their products are designed with the highest quality materials and craftsmanship, ensuring they perform in the toughest conditions, whether you're on land, water. Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. One of the most unique features of Rugged Road coolers is their ability to always float upright, never lose a drink. And unlike other heavy-duty coolers, Rugged Road's coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip without compromising on performance. It's crafted to handle the toughest environments. Their coolers are built to last, and it ensures they can keep up with any adventure. The coolers are guaranteed to keep their contents cool for up to 7 days, but often much longer than that. Perfect for a variety of outdoor activities, fishing, tubing, camping, tailgating. These coolers are designed to meet the needs of every outdoor or sports enthusiast, even if you wanted to use this on a tailgate to go watch the Bears. So gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road coolers. Reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head over now to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use code CHGO for 10% off. This is the most I've talked in a 30 consecutive minute point, I think, in years. I think I may lose my voice after this. My voice is already going raspy over here. All right. Back to more mailbag questions. What else we got here? We're going to take, I'm going to go a little bit faster. 30 minutes was a little bit too slow. I didn't anticipate myself going that slow. But I thought the whole sibling graph was pretty cool. And I think there's one question I do want to shout him out over here from Derek. He said, any under the radar bullpen arms you think the Cubs could target with some seam shifted wake or gyro spins and such? This is one of those tools that can easily identify the outliers. We talked about the outliers. This is one of those tools that just seamlessly finds those outliers based on whatever features you want. So if you want to find, a guy that's 2 standard deviations or, really far away from the norm of most pitchers in the league, this is a tool how you can do it. And then you can see exactly why those pitchers are different and see how those features that are different fit into your coaching infrastructure. That's where I think something like this could work. And we'll do it this offseason. We'll find some free agents or trade targets that fit some of those outlier trends. Okay. So quickly from our good friend Greg Cuss, you guys know Greg Cuss by now. Number 1, unsarcastically, say one nice thing about Jed Hoyer. Okay. Honestly, we talked a lot about Jed Hoyer over the years. A lot of it's been in negative context. Jed was part of that front office that brought over a World Series. He's not an idiot. He's deliberate. He's convicted in his philosophy, and he's doing what he wants to do. Now, the reward hasn't come clearly for Jed, and his intention hasn't executed yet, but he has acquired a lot of talent in this front office. It's just a matter of it can mesh in year 5. Dan Kantrovitz, highly touted, in fact, was considered for higher up front office executive positions as recent as last offseason. They do have talent in this front office. Again, it's just a matter of making it work and yielding results. That's what we'll see, but he has rebuilt the farm system. He has experience of winning a World Series, but in year 5, if you're not a 90-plus win team on paper, you have to question the process. And of course, the ownership will do that. Okay. Another question from Greg, choose one 40-man roster player to have an all-star caliber season that you think will make the biggest impact on the team. This one's pretty easy for me. It's Miguel Amaya. The reason I say Miguel Amaya is simply floor to ceiling. We saw the floor last year was potentially DFA off the team. Ceiling is one of those guys who could be an above-average offensive bat. It's ceiling for a reason. He is not that, nor should the Cubs project that. But on this roster right now, the 40-man roster, and those who are most likely to get at-bats or innings, he's the one that represents the widest variance. And for the Cubs to achieve their 90-plus win total, they need as many guys outperforming their floors. A floor replacement level versus that of, let's say, a 3-1 player represents one of the biggest differences in projection. So for me, it's Miguel Amaya, especially at that cost-efficient rate. Okay. Greg did say, take some time to talk about Jock Jones. Jock Jones, just to let you know, MLB The Show, 2006, 2007, one of the best bats. The ratings weren't up there for Jock Jones, but I'm telling you, something about those like gaming graphics, I was locked in. I was like Barry Bonds with Jock Jones hitting over there. Okay. Alex Pat, our good friend Alex, he was on the show. I got to say, Alex is one of the best follows on Chicago sports Twitter. One thing I like about Alex is when I'm feeling down about the Cubs or, Chicago sports, there's one guy I know who's feeling worse than me. It's Alex. I mean that in full compliments. I love when other people are just as miserable as me. Alex is one of those guys. So he said in his tweet, quote, I wrote a post pining for Kirby Yates. Yay or nay on that idea? Also, what's the limit of sport peppers on a Chicago hot dog? All right, you got a 2-for-1 over here. I can tell you right now, Corey does not put sport peppers on his hot dog. He's a hot dog guy, does not put sport peppers on his hot dog. I'm going to actually blast Corey a little bit over here. Doesn't put tomatoes on his hot dog either. I have to tell him, hey, put tomatoes on those hot dogs if you're going to be taking pictures of those and posting them on Twitter. Not a tomato guy, Corey is. For me, I'm hit or miss. Sometimes I just go with one pepper, okay? I want a little bit of spice. Sometimes, I want to feel the burn. I'll do 2 peppers. It kind of just depends. Maybe there's not enough celery salt in the hot dog. I want a little bit of oomph to it. Then I'll do, 2 sport peppers. Hit or miss. Kirby Yates, yay or nay on that idea? I am yay on bringing in as many unique pitchers as possible. I'm yay on doing so in a cost-affordable way. I like it. He's 37 years old. There's risk, of course, and you know this, Alex. There's risk in those higher 30-year-old guys. That being said, let's look at Kirby Yates. We're going to go back to our sibling plot. And if you're going to roll your eyes, listen, sorry, you're with me. You're stuck with me. Deal with it. Okay. So just quickly on Kirby Yates. Let's type in Kirby Yates. Let's see what makes him stand out. We're going to go to, what is this? 4-seam fastball. Type in Yates. Let's see what he's got over here. And there you go. So you probably can't even see my mouse on this screen, but in the middle of this plot is the average pitcher. Go up, go to the left. There's Kirby Yates. He's probably around 2 standard deviations away from the norm. So who does he look similar to? All right. A lot of names on this list. First on the list, Luis Castillo. Also on this list, Nathan Eovaldi and Joe Kelly. Those 3 guys have had success. Kirby Yates, of course, has had success. So why is he similar to those guys? Well, let's look at Luis Castillo, former Red, now on the Mariners, is having success. Why is he similar to Luis Castillo? Vertical release point, 5.2 feet, somewhat lower. Horizontal release point, 2.3, 2.5 feet from the shoulder, almost identical. Horizontal break, both have around 12 to 14 inches. Again, almost identical. Vertical approach angle, vertical release angle, horizontal approach angle, horizontal release angle. Everything is almost identical. Spin axis, spin rate, everything, right? The difference between the two is that Luis Castillo throws 95, Kirby Yates throws 93. So that's the similarity between the two. Of course, he makes sense, right? The challenge, though, again, is for the Cubs trying to project stability within their financial window. They did go over the luxury tax last season. Who knows if that was intentional or not, if they projected that to happen. I was not happy about them going over, but they did go over. Kirby Yates being 37 is going to demand, a few $1 million maybe. So it's just a matter of how much risk they want to give to that millions of dollars instead of going with maybe a recently non-tendered guy, someone, I don't know, in the Rule 5, for example, going internally and only spending 700, 900K versus, I don't know what Kirby Yates is going to get. Maybe he'll get, only $1.5 million. Who knows? But that will be the question. I like the idea, though. I like the stuff, but I'm not going to slot in Kirby Yates for a reliable back-end reliever. And quite frankly, I'm not going to do that for most guys. As we know, pitching, relief pitching, especially today, flip a coin. It changes on a year-to-year basis. The most important task for me this offseason for the Cubs is to get as many pitchers as possible to offset that broken bullpen in late May and June. And yes, I want stability too. I don't want to rely on squinting at Hector Neris and hoping his age doesn't bite him, which it did. I don't want to think, oh man, what happens to Adbert Alzolai's health, which we know the answer to that. I don't want to rely on someone who's had a volatile recent history, whether it be injuries or just, being DFA, like Julian Merriweather. All those guys are great arms. Hector Neris, no longer with the team, but Merriweather, Alzolai, and so on. Great arms. But there's an underlying degree of volatility that is always going to be there, and it's up to the Cubs to properly account for that, either through spending, which is difficult to do on relievers due to the volatility, or just having the best damn coaching infrastructure and development system. Matching that north in Milwaukee, which is light years, maybe a little bit hyperbole, but recently within the last 3-4 years, light years ahead of the Cubs. They have to match that. They have to be just as good, if not better, at coaching, developing, and identifying that talent like Milwaukee is. Getting the hiccups over here. All right, let's go back to our mailbag over here. We have a lot of questions. We got 18 minutes. I don't know. Maybe we'll go over, maybe we won't. If I start losing my voice, then, that's going to be it for me. All right. Good friend, Matt Clapp, 2-part question. Who's a hitter that you target in a trade? Second question, who's a pitcher that you target in a trade as well? He put in parentheses that are at least semi-realistic options anyway. Number one, I want to target Shohei Ohtani. No. Realistic? I mean, we're talking like, 30 teams, 40-man rosters, over 1,000 players. Like, it's really difficult for me to wrap my mind around legitimate trade candidates. Naturally, I think high ceiling, high return. I look at the Cubs' 8 top prospects in AAA. I think, okay, who's going to get us the most confident, highest value return? And whether it's realistic or not, we haven't heard rumors about it. I don't even like playing the hypothetical game. But for me, I look at trade candidates. I want the best. And Vlad Guerrero Jr. is likely the best guy on the market if he were on the market for a trade candidate. 25 years old. It's going to be a free agent after next season. He is a unicorn hitter. He has the unicorn trait of high contact, high power. This is someone that the Cubs can trade for next day. Get out the checkbook, hold Tom Ricketts' hand, bring him in, bring over the family. $350 million and just sign him up. This is one of those guys that because of his age, because of the power, because of the underlying numbers, everything, he projects well. High contact guys, high power guys always project well. The most predictable trait for a hitter is contact. Rarely changes year in, year out. That projects to probably age better than someone who has a lot of whiffs, like Brent Rooker, for example, who's going to be over 30 years old. Also another guy, but again, I need give me the certainty, give me the highest output guy. Trade Casey, trade Alcantara, trade Triantos, trade 3+. This is one of those guys I would love for the Cubs to get. For pitching, everyone's talked about the Seattle Mariners guys. I Who knows if they're available? They have probably the best projectable starting rotation in the league, given their youth and given their unique traits of command, of strikeouts, of unique stuff. Right now, if we look at just the value by the Seattle Mariners, I'm going to pull up these numbers, which very impressive that the Mariners have a starting rotation of this caliber, and quite frankly, jealous. So, we talked about, Luis Castillo. We talked about in the past, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller. Kirby had 191 innings last year. Logan Gilbert, 208 innings. Bryce Miller, 180. Luis Castillo, 175. So they're stable contributors. You look at those guys, you think, all right, maybe Bryce Miller, maybe Logan Gilbert, but 27 years old, 26 years old for Kirby. Kirby's walk rate is like insane. I mean, I cannot believe that a pitcher like Kirby, he's one of my favorite pitchers to watch, by the way. He just like picks up pitches on the fly and he uses it, flawlessly. But his walk percentage last year was 3%. It's absurd. I mean, he walks fewer guys than Javi Baez used to walk. This is absolutely insane. His career walk per 9 is 1.1. So realistic, I don't know if that's realistic. So then the question is, well, who is realistic? I don't know. All these pitchers are probably available in some respect, whether it be relievers or some, fringe starting pitchers. I don't have a preference. Like I said earlier, I'll look for those unique outlier guys. But if we're going to be realistic about this, it's possible the Mariners want to improve internally and they would be willing to listen. But I really would be shocked if they do trade one of those guys. There's a reason why they're projected to be at least competitive and is anchored by that starting pitching staff. Which then another question was, rank the Mariners starting pitching staff. This is from @RushingBaseball. Toss a coin between Gilbert and Kirby, George Kirby. Push comes to shove, I'll pick Kirby due to the walk rate, but Logan Gilbert has, 208 innings last year. I would probably, again, push comes to shove, I go Kirby, given his unique stuff, given his mindset. Who knows? He could be 30 years old, throwing a completely different pitch repertoire, and I find that very interesting. So Kirby, number 1, Gilbert, number 2. Between Luis Castillo and Bryce Miller, go with the age, of course. I'll go Bryce Miller. He's 25 versus Luis Castillo being 31. So in order, Kirby, Gilbert, Miller, Castillo, and that's actually how the value lined up last year. Kirby had 4.2 WAR, Gilbert had 4.1, Miller had 2.8, and Castillo had 2.3. All right, moving along with these questions. What else we got here? Question from our good friend, Alex. Why is Jed Hoyer so passive with trying to get big free agents since they help make a team go far into the playoffs? End quote, end question. This is their degree of comfort. And the logic with the front office is spreading out the money, lower AAV, hoping that even though they're spending between $15 to $25 million AAV and many guys, including pitchers, that some of those guys outperform those projections. And if they don't, then you have a base and you can adapt on the fly if you get farm improvement from your prospects. Hasn't worked. Clearly, they're spending 15, 25 million on guys who are producing like league average guys, an average win, if you believe in that. And, most teams spend around $8 to $10 million for an average guy in the free agent market for a 2-win guy. 8 to 10 for 1 WAR, around 16 to 20 for 2 WAR. That's what the Cubs have. They have a bunch of 2+ WAR projected guys, and they performed like that recently. And they have not overproduced their projections. And because the farm is not percolated up through the system to the big league level specifically, then it hasn't been enough to offset the lack of hitting on those top tier projections from the guys who are paying 15, 25 million. That's been the flaw. And if it doesn't happen this year in terms of the farm system producing value at the big league level, and we're talking high value, then the ownership is going to be looking introspectively to determine what the best path forward is. It's also the reason why we're entering the fifth offseason, currently projected without improvements, as another mid-80 win team. It's, of course, simply not acceptable. It's not acceptable to front office at all. And much of their frustration or angst is likely shared with the fan base. They are, though, convicted that they have the talent in the farm. They have the nuclei across all levels, coaching-wise, player personnel-wise, to make this work. We will need to see it play out. And they're going to have a year to see it play out. And there's a world in which it does play out. It is unsettling, though, that it has taken 5 years. Okay. Another question here from Matt Sewick. I can barely say half these names. I don't even know if I'm going to say Max Fried's name right the entire time. And I'm going to be like looking back at this 50 minutes, wondering what the hell was I doing saying that name wrong. Matt Sewick. If the Cubs are going to add a superstar bat this offseason, how did they get it done? You get out the checkbook and you write a check for $1 billion to Juan Soto. Not going to happen. Who knows how much money he's going to get? Maybe, $500, $600 million. That's the easiest way. Second easiest way, rather realistic way, maybe not even realistic, but if you want to go the trade market because of the proximity of Vlad to free agency and the Blue Jays, weird competitive window might be Vlad Guerrero Jr. He had expected numbers, weighted on base average numbers of like 390 plus over the last few years. Last year, he had a WAR of over 5. We're talking strikeout rates of, again, 13 to 16%, 30, 40, 50 home run plus power. The guy's a superstar. So those two guys are probably it. Second question from him, who starts at catcher next year? That's a great question. We'll see how much they believe in Miguel Amaya's improvements in the second half ever since he adopted that minimal leg stride. Right now it appears to be Miguel Amaya, but they're going to have to look for at least a complementary piece. And my preference is they get someone who's more stable than Miguel at this point. Who that is remains to be seen. Not going to be Wilson Contreras, in case people are wondering. Other question here from Thomas. Would Casey be the only prospect possible to steal one of the Mariners pitchers? They have a flurry of prospects. Again, we don't even know if the Mariners are shopping their pitching staff, but Casey might be intriguing for one team and Kevin Alcantara might be intriguing to another team. It just depends. It's how internal projections work for each individual team. Question from Edward Buell. What sort of offer would the Cubs need to make to pick up an elite player like Vlad Jr., Julio Rodriguez, etc.? Julio Rodriguez, a lot of Mariners connections here. He signs that 10-year deal. He's not leaving Seattle. He's freak athlete, outfielder, speed, consistently improving power. Not going to happen. Vlad Jr., I don't like playing in this hypothetical trade universe. Again, I don't really care who they trade. Like, trade 3-4 guys from the farm. I honestly don't care. This, for me, having someone like Vlad's projection as a 26-year-old and you lock him up, I would sleep so well at night. Everyone would. With having a 26-year-old, 45-plus home run guy who does not strike out. Sign me up for that. I don't care who you trade. Dan, Thunder Dan 63, greatest Cubs manager not named Joe Madden. David Ross, no. I don't know. Lupinella had his, fun times. He's old school guy. I started watching Cubs when Don Baylor was the manager. Folks like Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker basically ruined my childhood as far as I'm concerned with managing the Cubs pitching staff. I'll go to the grave with that belief. So I'm not going to say Dusty Baker. Sorry. I still can't get over Mark Prior. Just saying, look at all the damage that has caused. If Mark Prior didn't, end his career early, he may not be with the Dodgers. Everything would have been avoided. This entire all the world mess, the entire universe could have been fixed had Mark Prior just stayed healthy and, Dusty Baker just looked at an Excel spreadsheet and said, hey, 210 innings for this guy, multiple years, not going to work. That being said, congrats, Dusty Baker, in a World Series. Good for you. Question from Andrew Lucas, 24. Is there any world where the Cubs go after Willy Adames to play third? I'm sure they're going to look at it, but they're convicted with Isaac Paredes. Isaac was a top 10th percentile offensive producer for 2 years with Tampa Bay. in kind of like a selective matchup role, but he played mostly every day, but some days did not play. They're convicted with Isak. So I doubt that happens, but you never know. Speaking of that, from Kelder23, why do people insist Isak Paredes has a long track record of success? This is a good question. It's kind of, little contradictory, right? But it is a fair question. He has success. So overall, it's reflected in his projections, Isak. So let's go over this. I'm going to pull up his Fangraphs page as we speak. So since 2022, these are his overall WAR numbers: 2.4 in 22, 4.3, 23, 3.4 last season. His weight on base average in 22 was 323, but his WRC plus is 115. Last season, 136. This season, it was 117. So he's been an offensive producer in the tier of what you saw from Ian Happ at a corner position, also young. But it's not a track record of success that personally, I would not consider projectable. Never has had a season over 650 at-bats. Last season was his first in which he went over 600. We saw the second half troubles with him, how he produces with a slow, long swing that yields extreme pull contact. It's unorthodox. Since he is unorthodox, there's not a good comparison of guys who have similarly produced over the years, which means you don't have a ruler to measure anything. And that's what you want in projections. That's what stuff plus these projection models are built off, is finding guys with similar traits and projecting that into a form of future success. For Isak, because there's no one with his profile, recent memory, it's difficult to project. And that was, for me, one of the principal limitations when we acquired him, whereas other folks, understandably so, are very excited. For me, it was like, I like what I see. The offense is clear, but these are a lot of questions. Not to say it's negative, but it's a lot of questions. I don't like a lot of questions. I'm a little bit more, I don't want to say risk averse, but I rather project shorter term guys than longer term guys. And that's always been my, conflict with the front office, because I feel as if times they believe they have a better idea of projecting, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. This is just my interpretation. I mean, it may be completely wrong. They think they have a better idea of projecting those guys down the road than in reality. And because baseball continues to change on a year-to-year basis, I think there should be a little bit more urgency in gaining value up front and then adapting. And with Isak, it's hard to see how he's going to age, and even hard to see how he produces next season. All right, we're entering almost the hour mark here. We'll do a few more questions and we'll sign off. What do we got here? Okay. Who is the most impactful player on the current roster you think is likeliest to be moved, from our good friend Tyler Free? Likeliest to be moved has to be someone who's not on the no trade list. So remove Ian Happ, Seiya. Also probably remove Dansby from that. I'll probably go with Michael Busch. He produced more value than Pete Alonso last year. I'll take Pete Alonso over Michael Busch, to be frank with you. But the reason I think he's probably the most impactful to be moved is discussions about Nico Hoerner. Nico Hoerner is a 4+ win player. Defense, high contact, average, slightly above average league bat. He has that elbow injury. There's some uncertainty there. So again, this is likely. Busch, the reason I think he could be moved is because the way to elevate your ceiling projection-wise is to improve the corners, whether it be third base or first base. First base is the one position in which there's not a high ceiling, super high. There's not a guy at first base with a ceiling that seems to be achievable within the tier that we need. 5+ WAR, right? Busch probably is not that guy. He's probably more of like a 2-3 WAR guy, given his current profile. Also, a lot of peaks and valleys. He has a whiff rate that is not really where you want someone with this power output. Typically, if he whiffs that much, you want a little bit more power for a guy at the corner position. Defense, played well defensively there last year, but you know how first base is, can be volatile at times. Still inexperienced at first base, but performed really well and improved over the year. I just think for him, like the Cubs were in position last year, they might be a team who wants a pre-arb guy who performed recently well, but there may not be a spot. And for the Cubs, their spot is first base where they can improve, and Bush is, no longer needed. So that's where I think he could be, most likely to be moved. Let's wrap it up. I'm losing my voice, guys. 60 straight minutes. I haven't done one of these since like 2019. So again, Corey, family emergency. Sounds like everything's, okay. No reason to be concerned. We will be back next week. We have a full slate of shows every single day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think Cody's on vacation, whatever. You guys have a show every single day. 11:30. Tune in. Watch the guys. Bears coverage. Every Sunday, they got shows like crazy. You got Cole Kmet shows. You got, Lance Briggs, Braggs, all of them. Best in Chicago. We'll be back next week. Maybe we'll get more insight on the Cubs offseason plans, maybe more tangible insight on Max Fried's realistic chances as being a Cub. Maybe Corbin Burnes rumors come up, but we're entering that zone in the offseason where it's post-GM meetings, pre-winter meetings, where stuff doesn't really happen that much. So don't expect news, but hey, you never know. With that being said, we'll be back next week. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for putting up with some of these, graphs. I guarantee you some people are going to be looking at this on YouTube. Click on the link. They see me for like 30 seconds. Roll your eyes. I totally understand that. I do want to put this out there, though. Of everyone on CHGO for the Cubs, even the White Sox crew, I am the most baseball guy out of everyone. Got my A2000 over there. Okay. Play shortstop, second base, growing up. Okay. I'm more baseball than everyone else. So maybe, I know a little bit about numbers, know a little bit about, stats and all that stuff. I get it. I'm not a stats guy. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a baseball guy. Okay. I had a little chew when I was growing up. I don't recommend it to all the teenagers out there or whatever, but hey, I understand the whole baseball thing. I'm the most baseball guy of anyone on this CHGO Cup staff. So don't be rolling your eyes. Don't be thinking, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, I know all the issues with war and all this stuff. I get it. Okay. Relax. That being said, see you next week.
We all silly like the mayor.